March 2nd, 2001, 11:17 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
The administrator at Fort Myer logged into the U.S. Army network for routine maintenance. Checking overnight logs, standard protocol. His screen flickered. Someone else was inside the system. Right now. Moving through classified files like a ghost through walls. 23 years of military IT experience told him this wasn't a drill. This wasn't some penetration test the Pentagon forgot to warn him about. This was real. He typed furiously, fingers shaking, trying to trace the connection back to its source. Somewhere in the command center, alarms should have been screaming. But the intruder had disabled them. Quietly. Professionally. The administrator initiated a trace protocol. The intruder noticed. A message appeared on the screen, typed in real time, letter by letter, taunting. Your security is crap. I'm just a teenager with a 56K modem. Then the connection vanished. What the administrator didn't know, what nobody at Fort Myer knew that Tuesday night, was that this wasn't the first breach. It was the 97th. 97 U.S. military and NASA systems. Penetrated. Compromised. Explored. All by a kid in a bedroom 3,500 miles away, searching for one thing that would make him either the most famous whistleblower in history or the most delusional hacker ever arrested. He was looking for proof that we are not alone in the universe, and what he found would make him disappear.
Gary McKinnon didn't look like a threat to national security, didn't dress like one, didn't act like one. At 19 years old, he looked exactly like what he was, a skinny, awkward computer enthusiast living with his mother in a cramped flat in North London. Disheveled hair. Thick glasses, the kind of kid who could explain Unix architecture for hours, but couldn't maintain eye contact for more than 3 seconds. His bedroom was a shrine to the paranormal. UFO documentaries on VHS tapes stacked against the walls. Dog-eared copies of Disclosure Project documents. Blurry photographs of alleged alien spacecraft pinned above his desk. And in the center of it all, an aging compact computer with a dial-up modem that screamed like a banshee every time it connected to the internet. That modem was a portal, and Gary had learned to walk through it into places he absolutely should not be. It started innocently enough. Or at least, that's what Gary told himself during those first late-night exploration sessions. He wasn't trying to steal military secrets or sell classified information to foreign governments. He had no interest in nuclear codes or troop deployments or weapon systems. He just wanted to see the files they were hiding about UFOs. The U.S. government had to know something, had to be concealing evidence. Gary had read the testimonies. Military officers, commercial pilots, NASA astronauts, all describing encounters with objects that defied physics, that moved in ways no human technology could replicate. The government denied everything, of course, but denial meant nothing if you could prove they were lying. And Gary knew how to prove it. He'd discovered something that would make security professionals vomit into their coffee. Thousands of Windows NT machines on military networks with blank administrator passwords. Not weak passwords, not default passwords. Blank passwords. The digital equivalent of leaving the Pentagon's front door not just unlocked, but removed from its hinges with a welcome mat reading, "Classified secrets this way." The first time he got in, he couldn't believe it was this easy. He'd found a vulnerability scanning tool online, freely available, nothing illegal about possessing it, and pointed it at U.S. military IP ranges. Then he sat back and watched as system after system came back with the same status: vulnerable, no password required. His hands trembled as he initiated his first connection. He was inside a NASA Johnson Space Center computer in Houston within seconds. No alarms, no countermeasures, no indication that anyone had noticed. He navigated through directories, his heart hammering so loud he was certain his mother could hear it through the bedroom wall. Files everywhere, spreadsheets, reports, technical documents, most of it mundane, maintenance logs, meeting minutes, budget projections. But some files had interesting names. Non-Terrestrial Officers.xls. Gary clicked it open. The spreadsheet contained a list of names, military ranks, and assignments to ships that didn't exist in any public naval registry. The USS Hillenkoetter, the USS LeMay, the USSS Stein. Ships with the designation USSS, United States Spaceship. He stared at the screen for 17 minutes without moving. Either this was the most elaborate hoax ever planted in a NASA database, or he'd just found evidence of a secret space program. A fleet. An actual military fleet operating in orbit or beyond, hidden from public knowledge, funded by black budget programs that officially didn't exist. He should have stopped then. Should have taken a screenshot, posted it online, let the internet do what it does. But screenshots can be dismissed as Photoshop, doctored evidence. He needed more. Context, corroboration, a pattern. So he kept going. Night after night, month after month, Gary McKinnon became a digital ghost, haunting the networks of the most powerful military in human history. He hopped between systems, NASA, U.S. Army, U.S. Navy, U.S. Air Force, Department of Defense, leaving footprints everywhere but covering his tracks poorly because, honestly, he didn't think anyone was looking. How could they not notice? How could systems this important be this vulnerable? The answer was simple, terrifying. They were understaffed, underfunded, and had grown complacent. The military's cybersecurity in 2001 was built on the assumption that hackers were after weapons data or trying to disable critical infrastructure. Nobody expected a teenage UFO enthusiast from London to be rummaging through their file servers like he was browsing at a library. Gary found more spreadsheets, references to off-world officers, energy transfer programs that mentioned technologies with efficiency rates that violated known physics, image files labeled with coordinates that, when mapped, pointed to locations in high orbit. And then he found the photograph. It was in a directory on a Navy computer, tucked inside a folder labeled Restricted/USSS Raw Imagery. The file was large, high resolution. Gary's connection was slow, so he started the download and watched the image render line by line from top to bottom. First, stars. Just stars against the black of space. Then, a curve. The edge of Earth, maybe, or another planet. Then, structure. Geometric. Metallic. Massive. Then his mother knocked on his bedroom door, asking if he wanted tea, and Gary nearly punched through his monitor in panic. "I'm fine, Mum." "Just busy." He turned back to the screen. Now, a cigar-shaped object hovering in orbit. Not a satellite. Not the International Space Station. Something else. Something with symmetry too perfect to be natural and design too alien to be conventionally human. The download froze at 79%. His connection had been severed. Gary's blood turned cold. He checked his modem, still connected. He checked the network path, still active, but his remote session was gone, terminated. Not by him. Someone had kicked him out. someone had noticed.
3,000 miles away, in a Virginia office building that didn't appear on any maps, an analyst watched a log file with growing alarm. An intrusion detection system, newly installed, barely operational, had flagged sustained unauthorized access across multiple DoD networks. The intrusion had been ongoing for over a year. The analyst pulled up the access logs. The same IP addresses, over and over. British Telecom, London routing. Whoever this was, they weren't even trying to hide. They were accessing systems in broad daylight. Well, broad nighttime, spending hours inside NASA and military computers, downloading files, reading emails, browsing directories. The analyst picked up the phone. "We've got a problem. A big one." Within 48 hours, the intrusion became a case file. It became an investigation. Within a month, it became an international incident. Because Gary McKinnon hadn't just hacked a few computers. The final damage assessment would reveal he'd accessed 97 systems across 16 different U.S. government agencies. He'd deleted critical files. He'd crashed systems. He'd, according to prosecutors, caused $700,000 in damage and rendered military networks vulnerable at a time when the nation was reeling from the 9/11 attacks. The U.S. government wanted him badly, and they wanted to make an example. The knock on the door came at 6:43 a.m. on a cold November morning in 2002. Gary was asleep, dreaming about orbital mechanics and spacecraft he'd never see, when his mother opened the door to find 7 police officers from the British National High-Tech Crime Unit standing on the threshold with a warrant. Gary McKinnon? The officers didn't smile. "You're under arrest for unauthorized access to computer systems belonging to the United States government." They seized his computer, his disks, his notebooks, every scrap of UFO documentation he'd spent years collecting. They tore apart his bedroom like they were searching for weapons of mass destruction, instead of the conspiracy theories of a lonely teenager. Gary sat in the back of a police car watching his entire world get loaded into evidence bags. He'd known this day might come. Had fantasized sometimes about being arrested, becoming a martyr for disclosure, forcing the government to reveal what they were hiding in court. But the reality was smaller, sadder. No cameras, no crowds. Just a kid who'd gone too far, getting exactly what he probably deserved. Except the charges kept escalating. The Americans didn't want a trial in Britain. They wanted extradition. They wanted Gary on U.S. soil, facing U.S. courts, looking at U.S. prison sentences. And the numbers being thrown around were terrifying. 70 years, multiple life sentences, confinement in a maximum security facility alongside terrorists and murderers, for hacking to read about UFOs. Gary's legal team fought back. The extradition request was disproportionate, they argued. Gary had Asperger's syndrome, undiagnosed at the time of the hacking but clear in retrospect. His obsessive behavior, his inability to assess risk, his complete social blindness to the magnitude of what he was doing. He wasn't a terrorist. He was a vulnerable adult who'd made a massive mistake. The British courts disagreed. Extradition approved. But Gary's mother, Janice Sharp, refused to accept it. She launched a campaign. Media appearances, petition drives, letters to Parliament. She painted her son not as a criminal but as a victim, someone with a disability being pursued with disproportionate aggression by a vengeful superpower. The case became a cause célèbre. Human rights organizations got involved. Celebrities spoke out. Even the British public, normally skeptical of hackers, began to sympathize. The U.S. government didn't care. They wanted Gary McKinnon in an American courtroom, and they wanted him now. Years passed. Appeals, counter-appeals, medical evaluations, psychiatric testimony. Gary deteriorated. The stress, the uncertainty, the constant threat of extradition triggered severe depression. He became suicidal. His mental health crumbled under the weight of a legal battle that seemed designed to break him. Then, in 2012, 11 years after that first Fort Myer breach, 10 years after his arrest, British Home Secretary Theresa May made an announcement. Extradition denied. Gary McKinnon would remain in the United Kingdom. The U.S. prosecutors were furious. They'd been preparing for trial for a decade. But May cited medical evidence. Extradition would pose a high risk of suicide. Gary's Asperger's, his fragile mental state, the likelihood he'd harm himself in American custody. It was enough. Gary was free. But free is a complicated word. He never faced trial, never spent a day in prison. But Gary McKinnon didn't exactly return to normal life either. He vanished from public view. No interviews, no book deals, no triumphant revelations about what he'd found in those NASA files. The UFO community waited for him to speak, to share the evidence, to blow the lid off the conspiracy he'd risked everything to expose. He stayed silent. Some say he was threatened, warned to keep quiet or face renewed prosecution. Others believe he signed a non-disclosure agreement in exchange for avoiding extradition. Conspiracy theorists insist he was handled, that government agents convinced him his findings were misunderstood, that the spreadsheets and images had innocent explanations, that he'd seen nothing extraterrestrial at all. Gary himself gave only one brief statement years later: "I'm not a whistleblower. I'm just someone who made a terrible mistake." But here's what keeps people awake at night. What keeps the forums buzzing. What makes Gary McKinnon's story more than just a cautionary tale about hacking. He got in. He saw the files. And for one terrible, beautiful moment, a teenager with a 56K modem had access to information that, if his interpretations were even partially correct, would rewrite human history. Non-terrestrial officers, off-world transfers, a secret space fleet. Did he really see it? Or did an obsessive mind find patterns in mundane military bureaucracy, connecting dots that were never meant to connect? The U.S. government's response suggests the former. You don't threaten 70-year prison sentences for someone who merely embarrassed you. You don't pursue extradition for a decade over hurt pride. The fury, the sustained legal assault, the absolute determination to make Gary McKinnon face American justice. It reads like panic. Like he'd seen something he shouldn't have. Like he'd gotten close to a truth they'd kill to protect. Somewhere in the United Kingdom, Gary McKinnon lives a quiet life. He works in IT, ironically. Helps small businesses with their computer systems. Stays offline as much as possible. Doesn't talk about UFOs. Doesn't talk about NASA. Doesn't talk about that photograph that never finished downloading. His bedroom shrine is gone. His obsession, broken. His curiosity, beaten out of him by a decade of legal terror. The U.S. military networks he once wandered through, they've upgraded security, changed protocols, hired actual cybersecurity professionals. The blank passwords are gone. The doors Gary walked through have been not just locked, but reinforced, monitored, trapped. But here's the thing about digital evidence. It doesn't disappear completely.
Somewhere in seized hard drives, in backup tapes, in forensic images taken during the investigation, those files still exist. The spreadsheets, the transfer logs, maybe even that photograph, fully rendered, sitting in an evidence locker gathering dust. Did Gary McKinnon discover humanity's greatest secret? Or did he see exactly what a paranoid mind sees when it looks at classified military bureaucracy through a UFO-shaped lens? The only people who know the truth are the ones who've seen the evidence he collected. And they're not talking. What we do know is this. A teenager armed with nothing but a modem and obsession penetrated the most secure networks on Earth. He moved through NASA and Pentagon systems for over a year before anyone noticed. He accessed files, read emails, explored databases that were supposed to be untouchable. If one awkward kid from London could do that, what else has been compromised? Who else is inside right now? And what are they looking for? Gary McKinnon hacked the Pentagon and vanished. Not into a prison cell, not into witness protection, but into the suffocating silence of someone who saw something they weren't supposed to see, and learned too late that some truths are more dangerous than any lie. The truth is still out there. Gary just isn't looking for it anymore. The question is, are you?